I'm Bruce Fummey. It's the 11th of September, so it's the anniversary of the Battle of Stirling Bridge, where William Wallace won a famous victory over the English. Now, some Scots know that in fact it wasn't Wallace who gained that victory, or at least not him alone. If you want to hear about the other William Wallace, then this is the video for you. Incidentally, if you're interested in the people, places and events in Scottish history, then click the subscribe button at the bottom right hand side of the screen at any time so that you can subscribe during this video. And if you want to help keeping these videos going, then there's a link to support and become a member in the description below. In the meantime, let me tell you a story. There were two Scottish leaders at the Battle of Stirling Bridge. From a Scots point of view, it was a dual effort. Two armies came together to face the English. Two forces, two leaders. It might not even be a stretch to say two peoples. Now, the one that gets all the recognition is the man from West Central Scotland, William Wallace. But today, I want to tell you about the man from the north, Andrew de Moray. And to do that, I'm taking you to Urquhart Castle. You might also find it called Urquhart Castle. And that was the home of Andrew de Moray. Unlike William Wallace, the son of a minor knight, Andrew de Moray's family were nobility. His ancestor had been sent to Moray by David I to keep these northerners in check. His family had lands, titles and castles. Now, there's not much left of this one. You might just be able to see the flag on the hill behind me, but it's certainly worth the walk from the Black Isle village of Urquhart to look across the Moray Firth that shares our hero's name. For Andrew, as for everyone in Scotland, life was disrupted in 1286 when Alexander III died without an heir, and Scots, having to choose a future king, started to divide into two factions of Bruce's, with their contender, and the Cummins supporting John Balliol. It would have been a no-brainer for the de Morays. Andrew's granddad was John Cummin of Badenoch. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole events of the great debate over who should be king. Suffice to say that Edward I of England trumped all of that, and in March 1296 Edward besieged Berwick and committed untold atrocities. I've got a video about that if you're interested. The following month, young Andrew de Moray, along with his father, had travelled all the way south to face Edward's army at Dunbar. It was a disaster for the Scots, and both Andrew, his father and his uncle were captured. As high-status hostages, Daddy and Uncle would be taken to the Tower of London. Junior was imprisoned at Chester. But the story goes that our enterprising young hero manages to escape from this English castle, is able to conceal himself from the inevitable manhunt that follows in the north of England, walks north, crosses the border in English-occupied Scotland, and makes his way undetected all the way back here to Moray. James Bond or what? I have also heard it said that the jailer, who happened to be in debt at the time, negotiated a ransom and quietly put Andrew on a boat which sailed up the Irish Sea and back to the north of Scotland. But you choose the story that you like best. So Moray is back in the north of Scotland. He has his freedom for now. What does he do with it? The thing is that Dad is still a hostage in the Tower of London. There's probably a road back to rehabilitation. Does he live a quiet life? In May 1297, independently of each other, two things happen. In the south, William Wallace kills the English Sheriff of Lanark. And in the north, Andrew de Moray raises some men and takes back the castle of Urquhart, and he raises his standard here. Now remember, the English, or their lackeys, were still in control of the castles all over the country. De Moray was back in charge of his own, and from this castle on the Black Isle sought to spread rebellion throughout the north of Scotland. This is Urquhart Castle. Now these days the ruins are more likely to be besieged by foreign tourists hoping for some scenic views and a glimpse of Nessie. In May 1297, the English and their lackeys met at Inverness Castle on the 25th of May to decide what to do about Andrew de Moray. And on his way home, Sir William Fitzwarren, the English constable of this castle, and his entourage were ambushed by the very man that they were supposed to be dealing with. While he lost his men and horses, Warren himself managed to get back here to Castle Urquhart. De Moray followed him and laid siege to the castle. Now, without siege engines, a frontal attack at night was de Moray's only option. It was brutal and bloody, with losses on both sides. But ultimately, it failed. Now, de Moray wasn't the only nobility in the north with family in the Tower of London. The Countess of Ross was keen that Edward I should release her husband, the Earl. So she provided food and supplies from across the loch. De Moray had to head back to Och and lick his wounds. You see, de Moray had a problem with geography. To break out of the Black Isle, he had to get past Urquhart Castle here, or he had to get past Inverness Castle. Both were proven to be insurmountable problems. But if you're resourceful enough to escape from an English castle and walk hundreds of miles through occupied countryside to get home, there must be a way of getting out of your own castle to go the other way. The Moray Firth. If a waterway's named after you, you might as well use it. Instead of going round by land, they'd cross by sea to take another castle that had belonged to the Moray family. And once in possession of Duffus Castle, Andrew and his men, one by one, took the other castles in the area, gradually creating a Moray-shaped wedge between Aberdeen and Inverness. Now, Edward in England was furious. But remember, he wasn't just warmongering in Scotland, he was warmongering in the continent as well. What does he do with stretched resources? Haha! He goes to some of his imprisoned Scottish nobility and says, I tell you what, I'll let you go on condition you go and get Andrew de Moray. No problem, say John and Alexander Cummin, relatives of Moray and imprisoned for their well-known support for independence. We're your boys. I wonder how they got on. Their forces met up in Aberdeen and set out for Inverness. And as they crossed the River Spey, they saw de Moray waiting in ambush. Now, de Moray didn't spring the trap. The two forces continued to Inverness, tracking each other, but never attacking each other. The Cummins spent a while in Inverness Castle as de Moray continued to take castles around. Then they led their forces back east, taking some of the existing Inverness garrison with them. They sent a letter to Edward to say, sorry, Gov, we tried, but that de Moray's just too slippery a fish. We'll stay here in Buchan. Better luck next time. With the English and their lackeys in the area weakened, de Moray finally takes Inverness Castle and Urquhart Castle. The north is back in Scotland's hands. So much so that Edward's evil tax collector Cressingham writes to Edward saying, the greater part of your counties in the realm of Scotland are still unprovided with keepers, as they have been killed or imprisoned, and some have even given up, and others neither will not nor dare not return. And in some counties the Scots have established and placed bailiffs and ministers, so that no county is in proper order. Get it up, ye. Now they've got to send a proper shock and awe-sized English force to deal with the problem. And it's not just in the north that there's a problem. Remember William Wallace? He's still harrying the English further south. And as soon as he hears that the English are gathering together a force, he contacts Andrew de Moray. They meet and bring their two forces together. Two leaders, one unified Scottish army. Standing on this hill, looking out towards Stirling Castle, and an English force way too powerful for them to ever contemplate taking on. Commoners against noblemen, pikemen against knights, foot soldiers against cavalry. Everything in Wallace's history and instincts as a skirmisher would have backed away from taking on such a force. The nobility of Scotland had capitulated in Irvine weeks before. If only there was somebody from the nobility that still had some fight in them. Someone who had experience in pitched battle as well as guerrilla tactics. If only there was somebody with the legitimacy of a noble family and the heart of a patriot. If only there was somebody like Andrew de Moray. The only way for the English to go north was across Stirling Bridge. This was the first point in the river narrow enough to cross the Forth. Andrew de Moray escaped captivity in March, and he'd pretty much taken back Scotland north of the Forth by September. And because of this, they could stand on this crag with their backs to the north and face the bridge. The English had to cross 2 by 2. All the Scots had to do was wait. Let half of them cross, and the bridge, the field, and the odds were narrowed. I've read that de Moray chose the battle plan, and that makes sense. A man who'd fought the English in battle, who'd ridden against their cavalry, and who'd understood what needed to be done. In doing what needed to be done, he was mortally wounded. He survived the battle, but died from his wounds later. Would the Battle of Falkirk have ended differently if he'd been there to give us tactical advice? Would his noble heritage have gained support from the nobility in a way that Wallace never could? If they'd succeeded and put John Balliol back on the throne, as they intended, what of Robert the Bruce?
William Wallace is held up as being a great Scottish patriot, and of course he was. But Murray fought at Dunbar. On gaining release, he didn't go over to Edward's side as some others did. With his dad still in prison, he didn't take the safe road to appease Edward. He freed the north, making Stirling Bridge possible. He took equal billing with William Wallace, who wasn't part of the nobility, and ultimately, he gave his life in battle for the cause of Scottish independence. We're never going to know what might have been, but we should remember Sir Andrew de Moray. Hame Dochas could be Lama alive. Cheery and drastic.